Welcome to the June Market Thoughts video. My name is Maria Considine King, and I'm joined by Brad McMillan, Chief Investment Officer at Commonwealth Financial Network. Brad, in May, the market seemed to pull back from some of the earlier gains they had in the year. What happened?
It was a tough month, Maria, there's no question. U.S. indices ended up down a little more than 6%, which actually was an improvement on where they had been earlier in the month. Foreign indices did much worse. They were down typically around 12%. So there's no denying it was a tough month. And what really happened was the European situation that everyone kind of thought was under control during the first couple of months of the year. And then as we saw in April, where the markets kind of topped out, people were starting to think, well, maybe we're not so sure. Well, guess what? In May, it really turned out that, in fact, the situation was not under control. The Spanish banking system started to melt down. Greece essentially rejected the earlier deals that had been cut, and now we're waiting to see whether they will have yet another election, which will, in fact, reaffirm those deals. The European situation is not under control at all, and that really rattled a large part of the global investment community.
You mentioned Europe, and what needs to happen in order to calm and stabilize the situation there?
There are a couple of different problems with Europe. The first and the most fundamental is the political consensus is eroding. Up until right now, we've had a general consensus that austerity, spending cuts, is a way to solve the problem, and that was largely driven by Germany, who, after all, was writing the checks. You're now starting to see the political trump that. You've seen Greece essentially, potentially reject that consensus entirely. You've seen France do more or less the same thing. You've seen the Netherlands government in disarray. So there's an evolving consensus throughout the Eurozone that what they've been doing is not working. So now they need to make a decision about what they are going to do going forward, and that's a prerequisite for any kind of resolution. On the immediate front, the Spanish banking crisis is the crisis du jour. And we have a situation where Spain is trying to refinance their banking system. Their interest rates have spiked again. That is currently the matinee movie. Greece has moved to the sidelines. That's something that we need to see resolved pretty shortly, or that could continue to get even uglier.
So how was the U.S. affected by what was happening in Europe?
Well, there are definitely impacts to the U.S., but the direct impacts are relatively small. For example, net export exposure to the peripheral European economies is quite small. And a lot of the direct financial exposure, for example, through the banking system, has been dialed back substantially over the past year. So again, there is exposure, but directly it's relatively small. Many of the indirect effects can actually be positive. For example, the U.S. becomes relatively more attractive as an investment location because of the political stability. And you're actually seeing that in the sense that U.S. Treasuries are continuing to drop to rates that no one would have believed not that long ago. So the U.S. is perceived as a safe and secure market, and that's only a net benefit to our country.
So what are you keeping your eye on going forward?
Well, the U.S. domestic economy continues to grow, and I think that's a solid first place to start. Employment continues to improve, slowly, but it is improving. The housing market continues to stabilize and even show signs of an uptick. And auto sales are continuing to improve. So there's a lot of good news in the domestic U.S. economy. So we want to make sure that continues for a domestic view, and we want to keep a sharp eye on the foreign markets and the foreign situations and see how those evolve.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Maria.
And thank you. Please join us next month for the Market Thoughts video.